Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. A researcher in England has discovered that mushrooms communicate similarly to humans. Jimmy Kimmel said when they prodded them with electrodes, they exhibited spikes of cognitive activity that resembled vocabularies of around 50 words, like an Eric Trump level vocabulary. They were able to determine that mushrooms say hello, goodbye, and for the love of God, please stop eating us to get high. Ironically, you know who would find this story most interesting is people on mushrooms. Isn't that crazy? A mushroom might actually be a fun guy. Speaking of comedy that apparently isn't very good, T.I. was commenting on his show. I mentioned yesterday he got booed at the Barclays Center over the weekend. T.I. spoke to fellow comedian Michael Blackson and told Blackson, "I loved it. I didn't feel like they were booing me like that. I felt they were booing me like, I dare you to be more funny. I dare you to be more funny. I dare you to be better." Yeah, that's what booing is. What? T.I. added, "I don't care what they show. I ain't seeking nobody's validation. I'm not here for nobody else's approval. I don't give a damn." Curb Your Enthusiasm will return for season 12. I've tried to get into season 11, and I hit a wall like maybe 2 episodes in, and I just can't bring myself to go back. I don't know why. Does the season get better? Larry David was at some sort of Emmys event Sunday night. A live panel discussion was hosted by Rich Eisen, featured Larry David, executive producer Jeff Schaefer, Jeff Garland, Susie Essman, J.B. Smoove, Cheryl Hines, and Richard Lewis. That's a nice panel there. Rich Eisen tweeted, "So I was honored to MC an Emmys panel for Curb. I asked Larry David the ultimate question, will there be another season of Curb? He said, yes." Pete Holmes told the Buffalo News that his parents did not put up barriers to the idea of him becoming a comedian. "I don't know if that's because they believed in me or they just weren't paying attention. They were very supportive." He also talked about what he calls comedy cancer, the comedians who are always comparing themselves to other people, complaining what they were owed or what they hadn't gotten yet, never ended up taking necessary risks. Craig Robinson's out promoting his new Peacock sitcom Killing It. He spoke to Cleveland.com and they were curious what memories he has of Cleveland. Craig Robinson said, "Oh man, I remember the diner with the corned beef and the pastrami. That was awesome. Slimans, yeah. We had a great time. I also went to 2 or 3 of famous chef Michael Simone's restaurants and performed at Hilarities. Shout out to Nick. I've been going to Cleveland for a long time. I remember when the flats were not luxurious and lovely, so it's nice to see Cleveland doing its thing." Insider spoke to Melissa Rivers, daughter of Joan Rivers. Interesting article here saying, although plenty of comedians like Amy Schumer, Amy Poehler, and Sarah Silverman have expressed reverence for Joan Rivers' sometimes ruthless form of comedy, not every woman who made it in comedy felt the same way. Melissa Rivers said there are a number of very high-profile women of comedy who weren't fans. I always find that shocking. You don't have to like everybody, and I'm not sure they liked her brand of comedy and were never kind to her on the red carpet. They never gave her the tip of the hat that she deserved from them, whether they liked her humor or not. Melissa recalled her mother coming off the air one time and saying to her, "Wow, they don't like me." After Joan's death, Kathy Griffin reportedly got into it with Ellen, who, according to Griffin, called Joan's brand of comedy mean. All right, let's stop down for a second. High-profile women in comedy who did not respect Joan Rivers. All right, so this article says Amy Schumer did, Amy Poehler did, Sarah Silverman did, Kathy Griffin did, Ellen maybe did not. Who else is there to even speculate about? Carol Burnett? Wanton speculation by me? I have Googled famous women comedians. Amy Schumer already discussed. Joan Rivers, presumably like Joan Rivers comedy. Carol Burnett, I just speculated on. Lucy. Would Lucy not have liked Joan Rivers? That seems weird. Mindy Kaling. I don't know, Mindy Kaling's kind of sassy. I don't think it would bother Mindy Kaling. Sarah Silverman's a fan. Wanda Sykes doesn't seem like a snowflake. Phyllis Diller? Did Phyllis Diller secretly not like Joan Rivers? Gilda Radner, Tiffany Haddish, Amy Poehler, Tina Fey? No, Tina Fey's going to like Joan Rivers. Whoopi? Kristen Wiig? Is Kristen Wiig backstage at SNL going, "I hate Joan Rivers"? I don't know. Who are these people that don't like Joan Rivers? I mentioned on the podcast before, I worked with Joan Rivers. There are many words I could use to describe Joan Rivers. Number 1 word I would use other than funny? So that makes it the number 2 word? Busy. She was overscheduled when I worked with her. Mean? No, she was just having a good time. When I worked with her on her radio show, she had 2 writers with her in the room, and they were passing her notes, and half the time she didn't even know what she was reading, but she knew how to deliver a punchline. And she would get the last. And I don't mean to suggest she didn't know what she was reading. I'm telling you, the jokes were coming in so fast. Somebody would hand her a piece of paper. She would read it cold and then throw it down and keep going. So I don't mean it like in a cognitive, she didn't know what she was saying kind of way. It was just at such a rapid pace with the writers handing her notes and her just nailing the punchlines. That's what I mean by that. I would not describe her as mean. Busy? Sure. Feisty? Sure. I've told the story in the past. I got into arguments with her. I also went to her apartment and she was lovely. Joan Rivers mean? Nah, just a style of comedy. I have a recommendation for you. It is the Auntie Donna podcast. Now, you remember Auntie Donna? They had a Netflix show right at the start of the pandemic, I think. Australian sketch comedy group. Auntie Donna was on Netflix, was very funny. They have a podcast. Go back in the feed a bit. Now, let me look for you and see how far back it is. Not too far back. Go back to February 15th, episode 293, The Moving Car Prelude. So the bit is, this is the first podcast ever to be recorded in a moving car. That entire episode is the guys arguing over the rules of recording in a car, aside from the bit that it's the first to ever record in a car. And they wind up with all these, I'll call them parliamentary procedures. They argue about what the rules are, who's the president of the car, who's the prime minister, how do you add new rules, and it's pretty funny. And then episodes 294 and 295 are the Moving Car podcast. In part one, they go to the post office. It's funny, it's dry, it moves fast. The Auntie Donna podcast is my recommendation of the day. Let's stay in Australia. The Melbourne International Comedy Festival continues, and I saw a review here of the Raw Comedy National Final. This from Chortle. This time, Raw Comedy judges could not split the two frontrunners, Bron Lewis and Alexander Hudson, so both were declared winners. Both will now head to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in August. This is only the second tie in 27 years. Bron Lewis is a mother of 3, the latest of which is a relatively new COVID baby. Lewis has an unsentimental approach to her family, cynical, but appealingly upbeat about it. The epitome of the fun mom she strives to be. Alexander Hudson has cerebral palsy, which gives her permission to make some shockingly hard-edged jokes at the top of her set. The confronting approach might quickly get too much, so she eases back into a more conversational approach to talk about her daily life and how her infirmities make her more like her nonagerian grandma. However, she saves, spoilers, the best to, you weren't going anyway. She saves the best to last with what seems a silly non sequitur about a sexual kink, which evolves into a slyly political joke. That sounds like a good show. Some of the non-winners. Deli Boy. Not like Deli Boy, D-E-L-H-I, new word, B-U-O-Y. Had some solid jokes about overcrowding on the Indian subcontinent, his lack of success with women. The judges decided that was a little less than original, but his delivery is slick, measured, and confident. Feels like he has something to say. Aves Robbins was an audience favorite. Her jokes were about being single, the interstate travel ban during COVID, and how being transgender disappointed her family. Few jokes didn't land, but they liked her presence. 45-year-old Nathan Powell served up some authentic observations on being considered either young or old, depending on the context. The judges dinged him, saying his writing was simplistic. Ouch. Cathal Leslie had a strong opening, letting the tension caused by espousing an anti-vax sentiment hang on just long enough to be awkward before he punctured it. But others of his routines were too slowly paced. This is a great review in Chortle. Dom McGovern, light on gags. Well, that's not good, but he compensates it with a big blast of camp me energy as he gushes about his love of Pride, Love Island, and Jesus' chiseled body. Few of the jokes seem familiar, but he'd make a great MC with his animated delivery. All right. Iona Colville dedicated her entire set to her first name, but going in on such a specific and not especially interesting premise did not pay off. Yikes. Blake Pavey kicks off with some amusing talk about how even his mates are getting on board with the mental health message while still exhibiting toxic behavior, but he left his bombshell until later to give it more impact. He revealed he has cystic fibrosis, which will dramatically shorten his lifespan. His relatable comedy for dying people brought light to a dark subject with plenty of assured punchlines. That sounds like a very interesting set. Joshua Countino hit a few familiar touchstones about immigration and his ethnic background. He likened Perth to Afghanistan as both are desert hellholes. That said, a gag about Catholic priests did not, as promised, go down the expected route. But the alternative had no more punch than had he done a pedophile line. Chortle continues, there's something compelling about Gunit Kaur, but her hesitant delivery doesn't yet do justice to her quirky viewpoint, in which she likened ghosting to missing her period, or asked the question, how much meth is too much meth? Heather Jones offered an interesting, uncompromisingly frank account of her experiences in transitioning. She offers some angles you wouldn't have heard before, from her particular experiences of PMT without having the M bit to suffering hot girl problems. She could have done without the brutally graphic fisting joke. All right, over on Gossip Corner, Kim Kardashian said she met Pete Davidson at the Met Gala in 2021 before they were in the Aladdin sketch together and fell in true love that will last forever. She said, I ran into Pete Davidson at the Met and I was like, I'm so scared. I don't know what I signed up for, meaning SNL. Pete's like, can you read cue cards? You're good. You're good. He's just super genuine. It's just super fun to hang out and do nothing and watch TV and just do nothing. My favorite thing is finding someone to do nothing with. It's the best. We just run errands. You can be distracted with people, but you can't be with anyone and do nothing. Kevin Hart has been spotted filming on the streets of Belfast for the new movie heist comedy Lift. Kevin Hart plays a master thief in Lift with an I, who's wooed by his ex-girlfriend and the FBI to pull off an impossible heist with his international crew on a 777 flying from London to Zurich. All right, that sounds fun. For a second there, I thought it was about a cab driver picking up people and doing a heist. That would be a different movie, which he should make. Kevin Hart apparently has been showing up in comedy clubs in Belfast as well. Yahoo caught up with comedian Irene, too. I had never heard of Irene either, but I really liked the quote she gave. She's described as a little raunchy and grumpy. I've been described as Larry David. And I think this next part's really funny. I'm gay and I look like this, so people will come up to me and ask, hey, if I'm into your look, does that make me gay? Irene says, if you're a girl, then yeah, that makes you gay. And if you're a guy, that also makes you gay. Irene, too, added, the crazy thing to me is that people are still not getting the vaccine. And as a Chinese person, I'm very offended. We love free stuff. I'm showing up to these vaccine centers with Tupperware, fill it up. I'm going to eat it for lunch all next week. And the Star Tribune gets into the age-old question, has insult comedy gone too far? Comedian Soul, S-O-L, said, I'm used to roasts. I grew up on Comedy Central. But Jada didn't consent to people laughing at her disability, and black women are already the most disrespected group in the country. Louis Katz had a different point of view and said, if you look at what Chris Rock said, it doesn't really insult her. It just points out that she has short hair. But people get offended by the very fact that you're talking about a subject that's serious. They're turned off before you even get to the joke. So has insult comedy gone too far? They didn't settle it. Cliffhanger. That's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your shows. If you would like the show commercial free, become a premium subscriber. $5 a month gets you ad-free episodes. Do it. See you tomorrow.